Here at Trehill, they farm 600 acres. And at first glance, it looks like any other farm. But it's a trust tenancy, and things are never that simple. Appearances can be deceptive.
About 2 weeks ago, my son came in laughing and he said to me, Mum, I'm not quite sure what's going on, but there's a lady outside who's just asked if she could use the bathroom. So I've just showed her into the house. And I just wish I'd been quicker to sort of ask her if she was a member as she left, because she'd seen the National Trust sign at the entrance and decided that as a National Trust member, she could come into our home and use the facilities.
This misconception might be caused by the fact that most people don't realise that the Trust runs working farms. There are three main reasons why it owns agricultural land. Firstly, as part of the endowment on a stately home. Secondly, in areas where they need to preserve a traditional way of life. And thirdly, this farm here arrived with the National Trust almost by default. They were after the coastline and they got the farm to go with it. So they then had to face the question, what do they do with it? How are they going to farm it? In order to answer this, we need to understand a little about the recent history of farming. Most commercial farmers today have been educated into the post-war consensus, which sees extra productivity, trying to get the most out of their land as the highest priority. It's almost a sacred duty. But the National Trust doesn't quite see it that way. It has other concerns. They might include tradition, biodiversity, or even the look of the landscape. And that can be confusing to a farmer who just wants to earn an honest bob.
My father-in-law and father-mother-in-law came in here in 1968 on the back of the sort of dig for victory type ticket, if you like. They were into producing as much food as effectively as they possibly could. They drained land, they limed land, they improved the land, and I say improved in so much as for production, they improved it.
Today it has sheep, it has cattle, it has potatoes, and a new set of priorities.
We've now moved into sort of balancing up to where we farm the land, and that land which is most productive, we throw a lot of inputs in, fertiliser sprays, pesticides, but there are other parts of our land that aren't quite so productive, and those are the parts of land that we've identified and said that, well, actually, you know, maybe there isn't much point in throwing all these high-value inputs. There's only a finite amount of these resources. Isn't it better to concentrate those resources onto the more productive land?
Intensive farming is right in some places. It's not right everywhere, particularly because it's not sustainable. If you intensively farm and you do not leave wildlife corridors, you will lose that land eventually. That land ceases to be productive. Your rivers will die. The runoff will kill the rivers, it'll kill the fish. It is not a sensible way to perpetuate our environment.
Recently, this has become the Trust's mantra. It believes that if you only farm intensively, too many species will die out, and eventually the land will become barren. So the Smithies were encouraged to try a different approach with several of their coastal fields.
I think it was probably quite hard for Dad at one stage, definitely, and he took a while to get his head around the fact that all that work, all that effort, all the drainage that he'd put in was being ripped out.
You know, when you see diggers in there and bulldozers in there and pushing soil around like that, it is quite an emotive thing.
I think he sort of reaps the rewards now, and he started the environmental works with the one field Hofflands that he put into an environmental scheme in the mid-1980s.
What the Trust and the Smithies wanted to know is what would happen if the land was returned to what it was like before intensive farming and fertilisation. In order to measure this, they treated the three sets of fields differently, each one having the soil nutrients removed. What are the results so far?
I mean, the one thing that was very quickly was different was the birds. There's been a huge increase of skylarks and choughs. The ones that were left without any treatment at all just basically grew grass because there was a grass there anyway, and it's just grown and it's outcompeted everything else. The soil scraping and the light acidification with a light dose of sulphur are really the ones I'll take you to see. You know, they're the ones that look good. They got heather, and all sorts of other things, which the botanist can tell you all about. But the ones that are maybe as interesting as those are the ones that have got the high levels of sulphur that really we don't quite know where they're going. You know, this is a really long-term project. This isn't just 10 years. This is 50 years down the line.
But there are other sides to National Trust involvement too.
There's quite a complicated relationship going on here because Peter and Gina pay the National Trust a fee in order to use their logo to advertise their potatoes.
We have to comply with quite a lot of quite stiff regulation as to the production of the potatoes and all the crops and all the animal welfare within the farm.
It's been worth it for us. It gives us a market. The potato trade is notoriously fickle. You can lose quite a lot of money very quickly.
People who belong to the National Trust or aspire to belong to the National Trust trust the brand. And
we're not at the whim of a merchant that says, well, actually today I'll give you £80 a tonne, tomorrow I'll give you 75, and the next day I'll give you 70, and etc., etc.
So, Peter and Gina pay a fee, and that helps to guarantee an income. The trust gets its rent and the fee, and the customer is buying into a brand or known package, which includes a level of environmental concern.